in a series of webinars which look at aspects of the new Magna Carta Universitatem 2020 and celebrate our partnership with other key international bodies in higher education. And this is the first webinar which we have organized in association with the International Association of Universities, and we are very pleased to do that. Over 200 people have registered for this event, and they come from 54 different countries. So we look forward to a very rich occasion. Concerning the web protocols, could you please keep yourselves muted and your video turned off? The webinar is being recorded, and a link will be posted on the MCO website so that you can view it again or share it with colleagues. Within the possibilities of Zoom and a relatively large number of participants, we want the webinar to be as interactive as possible, and hence you're invited to ask questions via the chat function. Now, it's most likely that questions will be taken after we've had all three inputs, but please ask a question as soon as you can, as that will enable us to order them. And at the end of the webinar, we invite you to give us feedback via the link on page 21 of the background note, which we circulated today. We'll put that link up on the chat towards the end. So to our webinar today. The title is Fostering Sustainable Development, the Roles of Higher Education, Plans, Progress and Values. The webinar is built on three key components. Firstly, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which includes the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which was agreed by the UN Assembly in 2015. Secondly, the important role which universities are needed to play in all of the SDGs, not just SDG 4, which concerns education. And thirdly, the importance which values have played in enabling universities to serve society well over many years. The prime statement which sets these out was the MCU, drafted in 1988, which has been replaced by a newer version this year, MCU 2020. This takes away nothing from the original, but recognizes the more global responsibilities which universities have. In particular, an addition to the 2020 version is to strengthen the role of universities in the preservation of the planet and promoting health, prosperity, and enlightenment around the world. Our three speakers reflect these three components. Their biographies are in the supporting note, but let me just introduce them briefly here. The International Association of Universities plays the leading global coordinating role for universities in support of the SDGs. Dr. Hillich van Land is General Secretary of IAU and will speak about the role of IAU and universities in building more sustainable societies. Gothenburg University is leading the IAU cluster for SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. And Professor Eva Wiberg, the rector of Gothenburg University, will give an insight into leadership decisions relating to strategic engagement with sustainability and the SDGs, and will highlight aspects of the university's work. Finally, the Magna Carta Observatory was established to support and oversee the Magna Carta Universitatem. Dr. Seibold Norda is president of its governing council and chaired the international group which prepared the MCU 2020. He will speak about MCU 2020 and values for achieving sustainability. Each of our speakers will speak for about 15 minutes, and after that we will take questions and comments. So let us go now to Dr. Hillek van Lent.
I am coming in. I am just pulling up my presentation. So thank you very much for the nice introduction, but let me please just get my presentation to you in a second. Somehow it does not want to come up, which is not nice, because I had it open in a second ago. So, and here it comes, with my apologies. I hope you can see my screen.
We can.
And so thank you very much for your patience for this little technical glitch. We move from one platform to the next, and there is always something that happens when we are lost in the platform translation. So I'm very, very pleased to be here today, especially also for the IAU to be a partner with the Magna Carta Observatory to host or to offer this webinar today. And very pleased to be one of the three speakers together with Eva Wiberg, Göteborg University in Sweden, and Seibold Norda out of the Netherlands, but for the Magna Carta Observatory. It is really an honor to partner, and especially on this very important topic of higher education and research for sustainable development, and what role higher education plays in terms of plans, in terms of progress and the values part of the discussion. So indeed, let me introduce you to a few of the things that the IAU is doing. First and foremost, let me introduce you to the International Association of Universities with a few lines. For those who do not know the International Association of Universities, we just celebrated 70 years of higher education cooperation on 9 December last week, since we were created by UNESCO in 1950 back in Nice, at a UNESCO conference then. We're an independent non-governmental organization, and that part is important because we're based at UNESCO in Paris, yet we are really responding to governments, working with them, and sometimes also calling them to the task on a variety of issues. We're a membership organization comprising more than 650 universities and university associations from around the world. Some 130 countries are represented. Yet we do also reach out to 20,000 higher education universities, which form part of the higher education community around the world, because we maintain the UNESCO IAU World Higher Education Database, and thus reach out to all. We have strategic plans that we developed ever since the IAU was created in 1950. And in 1916, at the latest IAU General Conference, we adopted a thematic plan and a strategic plan, which called the association to work mainly on 4 key priority areas. The first one is leadership. And there we are actually very much aligned with the Magna Carta Observatory because we promote value-based leadership in higher education. The second thematic priority is internationalization, and not the mobility plans as such or other parts of international or internationalization agenda, but more supporting inclusive, fair, ethical internationalization of higher education. And there again, we align with many of the value-based propositions of the Magna Carta. And then the third priority is sustainable development. And there we are tasked with promoting the integration of sustainable development fully into higher education strategies. And that is a topic of major importance, obviously, for the discussion today. And the fourth and last, but not least, thematic priority is technology, and using technology or the digital transformation of higher education today to increase access to knowledge and education for all. So let me get back to the work that we do on higher education and research for sustainable development. What is it that we actually do? We foster the role of higher education in the global agenda today, but we started way before. We started already in the early 90s when the IAU board adopted a declaration, the so-called Kyoto Declaration. And that declaration was already calling the leaders of higher education institutions from around the world to engage with sustainable development. As you will see in the presentations, the uptake was not that strong in the beginning, and it took quite a while for higher education to really get their act together, if I may say it in such words. But the universities have really looked at how to align or get involved with sustainable development. For many years, it was much more on the environmental dynamics of the sustainable development agenda. But little by little, universities have come to also accept the fact that sustainable development is much broader, as David Locke just reminded us. And there in 2014, we reconfirmed the commitment of the IAU to the Sustainable Development Agenda and issued the Iquitos statement, which was actually to look at the inclusion of all the different knowledge systems around the world in the debates and development of a sustainable future. And that was used for the UNESCO World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development and led to future plans that today translate in what you see below. So we developed an ABC strategy, A for advocacy and analysis. So we advocate around the world, participate in roundtables, develop podcasts or conferences, webinars and sessions, publish books, all of that to continue to advocate for the strong role of higher education for sustainable development. We analyze as well, and there you see that we've developed global surveys around the world on the state of HESD, and the reports that we produce are available for free to all on the IAU platforms, and they're taken up by the leadership of higher education institutions around the world to see what it is that universities can do to engage with the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular now since 2015. The B stands for building synergies and networking. And that's what we're very pleased to do today with the MCO, to build this network. And that's also where we are very pleased to work with Göteborg University, because we network universities around the world, around the different SDGs, but certainly around the value proposition of the Sustainable Development Agenda. And then we communicate. That's the C in the ABC strategy, and we convene. So there are many resources, publications that are made available online. We developed a specialized portal to also identify actions, news events that are being developed by universities in order to network them and make them resonate. So what did we do more recently? In 2018, we launched the IAU Global Cluster on Higher Education and Research for Sustainable Development. And the idea came from the fact that people did not sit at the table when the SDGs were developed, yet they were all intrigued by it. What do we do and how do we do things? Eva Wiberg will give very specific examples, but in a broader sense, what we wanted to actually offer the higher education community around the world was a set of examples, or a new way to also engage with the goals in a very proactive way. So we invited universities from around the world to become the leaders on any of the SDGs from 1 to 16, keeping 17 to IAU, in order for, in that space, to develop new partnerships for the goals. So the 16 universities that came forward to become the lead institutions on one of the SDGs obviously don't work on only one. All the SDGs are linked. But it was very powerful to see these universities around the world to pick up one and really develop a plan around how to engage with the different SDGs. Each university was then invited to identify up to 5, initially up to 5 universities from the 5 other regions of the world where they were not located themselves, and build a network of universities of different kinds, different colors, different backgrounds, different aims and goals, and to all work together on any of the SDGs or across SDGs. And that gave life to the Global Cluster on Higher Education and Research for Sustainable Development. The main goal is to foster sustainable development principles and perspectives, and to share initiatives and really advance on the agenda itself. So the cluster itself allows to develop innovative, multidisciplinary and international collaboration initiatives, and certainly to foster a holistic approach to the SDGs. The overarching goal really is to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And the 2 concrete objectives for us is to generate a platform where resources are being shared, and to offer a networking hub for the many universities from around the world, those who are already engaged with the SDGs and want to share, and those who want to get on board. And thus it is a very powerful place and platform for universities to connect. Second, we serve as a global voice for higher education and sustainable development at many UN organizations, and not the least at the UN agency in New York, where we meet at the high-level political forum on a yearly basis, or at UNESCO, or at the UN ODC, where we have a powerful connect there as well, or as well at the OECD, the Council of Europe, and many other multi-stakeholder platforms. So we've invited universities around the world, and here they are kind of pictured on the global map, distributed across the globe. But if SDG 13 is taken up by the University of the West Indies, they work with the University of Ghana, they work around the world. So each of them sit in a specific place, because you need to start from somewhere and you need some support. But in the end, the connection is really a global one. And here you see how it operates. So for SDG 1, no poverty, it's the University of Ghana taking the lead, working with universities in Japan, Canada, Brazil. If you take 8, the University of Gothenburg, I will say no more, because Eva will be able to explain. Take 14, for instance, with the University of Bergen, working from the South Pacific to South Africa to Japan. And so these are the kind of dynamics that we tried to create, and where we were hopeful that it would work, it actually did. And it allowed to generate the kind of dynamics that was necessary to not only find the experts who would work on this from a certain perspective, but create the kind of dynamics internally in the institution to work from the different leadership levels to the experts, to the students, to the staff, including the admin staff or the technical staff in universities. Because it is really for whole of institution approach is that we have developed this broader project. So here you see it is kind of siloed if you look at this picture, but rest assured, this is not the case. So there are many information links that are available online where people can see what we did and how we actually operate. The cluster itself is presented. There are opportunities for many more universities to get on board. We have some 100 entirely committed which when you consider there are 20,000 around the world, that is maybe a small portion of the universities, yet you can imagine, and you will hear from Eva Wiberg, how much these individual universities are themselves networked with many other networks to foster education for sustainable development or research on sustainable development, campus initiatives, and linking up the different initiatives from around the world. And that is where, for instance, we're involved also with HESI, the Higher Education for Sustainability Initiative, that is meeting as we speak, or we're related to the Sustainable Solutions Development Network under the leadership of Jeffrey Sachs. Or we work with Copernicus Alliance, for instance, in Europe, or with the Arab Association of Universities, bringing together the Arab universities in that region, or UDUAL in Latin America, to name a few examples. We also thought that it would be very good to have other kinds of examples of how to engage or how to make it more tangible. And that is where we created a series of publications on the SDGs. 3 have now been issued, 13 on SDG 13, climate action 5, gender equality, and 14, life below water. But many more are to come and being developed as we speak. We offer bibliographies on higher education and research for sustainable development to get inspiration. We developed podcasts, and I give one example here, but we also developed with the BBC a series of short films. And that is where you see, for instance, the University of Gothenburg, who created one. And it was the theme that they chose to feature in the film was deforestation in Tanzania, and how from Sweden to Tanzania, the networks facilitate the development of innovative approaches to very crucial and important topics that we face at the local level, but also at the global level. So if we go back to this one, the other part that is very important is this networking of initiatives. There is no competition, there is only collaboration and cooperation, and there is a lot of discussion happening so that we don't duplicate efforts, but on the contrary, try to find the best possible grounds to maximize the opportunities that we have by working with the higher education communities around the world. So that is where we always also come together and convene in the context of the UNESCO ESD for 2030 initiative, and where we, for instance, will play an important role in the upcoming UNESCO conference on ESD for 2030. And all along the way, in the decade in front of us, we have the opportunity to maximize the opportunities for engagement. So this was the movie. These are certain contacts for you to look at. And I think I would leave it at this so that we have enough time at the end to also open up to some discussion. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hilik, for that wonderfully clear yet comprehensive description of the role which IAU plays. And I was just reflecting that it's wonderfully appropriate that we actually have representatives of so many different countries taking part today, because, you know, that's what you do. You serve to focus that. But let us move now to look at one of those universities leading on SG8 and invite Professor Eva Wiberg to speak about the work of the University of Gothenburg.
Thank you so much, David. And I will also share my screen. Let me see if I can get this done. Share. So we start from the beginning. Here you see the sea outside. Can you see it?
Yes.
Good, good. So actually, this is the west coast of Sweden. You see the sea outside Gothenburg and the region of western Götaland. I go on to the next slide, and I would like to say something about our university very briefly. So University of Gothenburg is one of the largest universities in the Nordic region. And we have a great variety of activities. The core activities and business is organized in and run by the 8 faculties that you see here on the slide, and you have pictures of them too. I'm not going into detail, but it is a broad, comprehensive university. At present, we have something like 49,000 students and 6,500 employees. And we call ourselves a city university. We are situated in parts of the central Gothenburg, but also outside Gothenburg. We have a new vision from next year, from 2021, our vision, a university for the world, which expresses the university's endeavor to be an international higher education and research institution that assumes responsibility for the development of society while helping to build a sustainable world. So sustainability is one of our core missions actually here. And we are also committed and have signed up to the Magna Carta Universitatum 2020. We are committed to strengthen the role of universities in the preservation of the planet and promoting health, prosperity, and enlightenment around the world. Democracy is also a very important issue for us, and academic freedom. And I think that the vision and also the goals that will be connected to the vision will guide our university through the period from 2021 to 2030. So actually a decade. The university takes our social responsibility seriously, and we have a strong global commitment. We strive, as I said, democracy is very important. We strive to educate democratic community citizens with respect for fundamental values such as human rights and academic freedom, both when it comes to research and education. And we've actually had more than 10,000 publications with researchers from other countries that reflect the multitude on ongoing international research collaboration during the last 5 years. This year, we also launched a new initiative called Global Sustainable Futures, GSF. And this is in partnership with our sister university in the same town, Chalmers University of Technology. We actually have integrated departments between our 2 universities. Global Sustainable Futures is a platform that facilitates the advancement of science-based knowledge towards achieving the 2030 agenda through collaborations with partners in low and middle income countries and focuses in particular on the global south. Then, of course, we have what we're talking about today, the IAU HESD SDG 8 initiative. That is a cluster that we will talk more about now. When it comes to sustainability and sustainable development, we would like, before I go into the SDG 8, I would like to say something about how we work with sustainable development and have been doing this since a long time. And my predecessor, Professor Pam Fredman, she has been working quite a lot on this, and I'm very proud to be her, to succeed her as rector, actually. So the sustainable and knowledge-based societal development, that is one of the 3 overarching commitments that we have in our vision, as I said. And we are determined to actually step up our contribution towards the sustainable development goals, which are articulated in the 2030 agenda. But this has been anchored since long in our university's tradition to encourage our staff and students to work with sustainability. So actually in 2004, we were the first university in the world to become environmentally certified under both ISO 14001 and EMAS. And we also last year, or this year you could say it started really, we entered a climate framework together with a large number of Swedish universities. So we consider the climate as an essential and a high priority future question, of course. And we agree by the year 2030 to have carried out measures to adhere the 1.5 degree warming limits according to the Paris Agreement. And here I would like to point out the importance of having our students with us here. They are very much involved and are our best critics here. They really press us in this. The university offers actually also a broader range of courses and study programs related to the environment and sustainable development, more than any other Swedish higher education institution. So we have sustainability labeled courses. That is something which we are very proud of. We can always become better, I know that, but still we are really engaged into this. And then there are, of course, many international research areas which relate to sustainability. So now we come to the SDG 8, inclusive green economy. And of course, at the core of this is the great challenge of how to achieve economic growth without compromising the environment and ensure respect for human rights in general and labor rights in particular. So we must make sure that the economic progress creates decent and fulfilling jobs for everyone while not harming the environment. And of course, one of the big forces that we have for the whole planet is to reflect the UN principle, leaving no one behind. And this is summarized in the world's inclusive green economy. Well, as we know, this year's Sustainable Development Report shows that COVID-19 is likely to have short-term severe negative impacts on most SDGs, and in particular on SDG 1, no poverty, and 2, no hunger, 3, health and well-being, and SDG 8. And the implications of COVID-19 pandemic have placed additional pressure on economics and people. And in addition to the ongoing health crisis, the pandemic is likely to cause lasting damage to fundamental determinants of long-term growth perspectives and erode living standards for years to come. So this is really, really serious. And challenges such as inequality and weak social safety nets have heightened the impact on vulnerable populations. And this implies that we need to pursue further research areas as the economic growth, work conditions and labor market, and this is increasingly critical. And let us not forget that this is the decade of action. We have to do something now. We only have 10 years left until 2030. And as the UN Secretary Antonio Guterres recently spoke on the state of the planet, he urged everyone to make peace with nature. And he referred to 2 reports, one from the World Meteorological Organization and the other from the United Nations Environment Programme, both which express how close we are to climate catastrophe. I can tell you the weather is lousy in Sweden right now. It's very gray and it's warm. COVID recovery and our planet's repair can be 2 sides of the same coin, Guterres also said. So all the SDGs are interconnected and dependent on one another. Nevertheless, the complexity of the challenges within each and every single SDG demands focus. And that was what Hillige also said before, and you too, David. So it's important to understand that they are interconnected. So therefore, we are very proud to be part of the IAU IHESD cluster and lead on SDG 8, together with 8 satellite universities globally, as was shown by Hillige. And we can also see the SDG here. We have the goals. We can see that it is a super goal because it promotes sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. So the global goal is referred to as the super goal that spans over a wide range of issues related to the economic growth, to resource efficiency, to innovation, to work conditions, labor rights, job creation, youth employment, and also tourism. So to achieve SDG 8, there is a wide set of challenges that need to be addressed. And we can then move to the next slide, where we can say that the SDG 8 initiative is a strategy for impact. So as we know, the strategic goal of SDG 8 is to mobilize work and policy interaction. The approach involves creating a network of researchers locally and internationally from a variety of disciplines of relevance for SDG 8. And behind this strategy is the overarching question of how academia, in the most efficient and reliable way, can be part of the solution to reach the global goals. So we believe that by leveraging the research community in doing what they are best at, high quality research, while focusing on the tools and methods they are used to, and then apply this on the predefined topics, meaning the targets and indicators of one specific SDG, then we can actually help in successful implementation and bring research findings to policy dialogue, because that is the goal, to bring it into policy. In brief, this is done through applied action, research, and policy interaction. So what are the objectives of SDG 8? Of course, we know that SDG 8 is a pilot, and we aim to apply concrete measures to contribute to change. The focus is on establishing structured process for exchange and dialogue within academia, as I said, also with the policymakers and practice. And these activities, they have to be conducted stepwise. We are now working on identifying and synthesizing research in support of the implementation of the targets with bibliometric expertise. And these thematic reviews on the targets will be presented in discussion papers, which in turn should include disseminating and critically scrutinizing the goal, targets, and indicators of the SDG 8. So to reveal, because there are those biases, contradictions, and also links to other SDGs. Academic discussions on the thematic reviews and resulting papers will be an important part of the process to share knowledge and ideas. And in order to accelerate the implementation of research, we will target research to policy interaction, as said, as well as collaboration with practice, such as authorities and corporates. And I think that there will be a possibility of having an impact on political process and policy making, not least at the yearly high-level political forum, by contributing to the voluntary national reviews on the countries represented in the SDG 8 initiative. And not the least, we should not forget education. We have to contribute to the research-based knowledge into higher education, because the young students and young people are the future leaders. You can see here some university collaborations that we have. We have 8 satellite universities in low and middle income countries who are committed to the SDG 8 initiative. And in addition, we have, together with Chalmers University of Technology, the Karolinska Institute, and the European Network for Education and Training on Occupational Safety and Health, ENETOSH, all these acronyms, they are also collaborating partners. And within our university, we also have, in the School of Business and Economics and Law, actually quite a lot of commitment when it comes to research policy interaction and to reduce poverty. Also, the Faculty of Social Sciences and the Faculty of Medicine, Sahlgrenska Academy are involved. So, and we have the actually developed modalities when it comes to international academic collaboration, highly relevant. So I think that the SDG 8 team can draw on the infrastructure that is already there within the School of Business, within the Center for Sustainable Development, and the other faculties. And here you can see the EFD centers that are committed to the SDG 8 initiative. You can see the satellite universities, which are marked in red, and then there is collaboration with the green ones. I would now like to introduce to you the SDG 8 team. So when you other university representatives connect with our team, we have from the left Eddie Omsen, who is our sustainability strategist. We have Gunnar Kjellin, who is the director of EFD. We have Jenny Strömstad, project leader for, at the Center for Sustainable Development. We have Lotta Delve, professor of sociology and work science. We have Jan Pettersson, who is the professor and director of the Center for Sustainable Development. And we have Marie Stensäcker, who is the deputy dean at the School of Business, Economics and Law. These guys are incredibly effective and really working with all their heart on the SDG 8 team. So I'm almost finished here. If I didn't say this, maybe I should say that what EFD stands for. It is Environment for Development, which is this, where Gunnar Kjellin actually is the director. Sorry for not saying that. But if we come to the timeline then, and I'm almost finished here. So we have, of course, a demanding but also exciting year ahead of us. And in January, the university will host SDG 8 workshops and webinars together with all of you to discuss the thematic reviews and papers. In July, we know that there is this high-level political forum in New York, the UN Political Forum. In August, there is the International SDG Conference in Gothenburg. High-level keynote speakers from academia and UN organizations will be present. And in November, we have an International SDG 8 Research to Policy Conference, which we have to confirm if this can be conducted, of course, but we hope so. And it was meant to be at Lake Victoria in Tanzania. So anyone who is interested in participating in one way or other, we encourage you to get in touch, and you have the website and the slides that I've shown. They are, of course, available to you all. So thank you very much, and back to you, David.
Thank you very much indeed, Eva. If I may comment, I particularly like the fact that you mentioned students in this, and seen as a long-term issue, what we do with our students is particularly important. Yeah. And at the observatory, we've had a very good experience with the organization Students for Sustainability, which, although it's multinational, I think originated in Sweden. Yeah. And Thank also, you. Like Hillig, I very much like the way that you took a situation which was enormously complex and brought great order to it in the way that you presented it to us. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now there's a whole lexicon about how complex universities are and how complex they are to lead. And of course, one of the things which has enabled them to be led over the years is their adherence to certain values, and to link those values with our subject today. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Seibold Noorder, president of the Magna Carta Observatory.
Thank you very much, David, for this introduction. Yes, I will indeed speak against the background of the Magna Carta Observatory. We are a community of close to 1,000 universities worldwide that have underwritten the principles and basic values of the Magna Carta Universitatem since 1988. And very recently, we have completed a new version of this statement that is to be seen and read and used and in addition to the original one. And one of the main sentences in that 2020 edition of the Magna Carta, in fact, one of the first statements of the new version actually refers to the central role of sustainability. Universities underwriting this new version acknowledge that they have a responsibility to engage with and respond to the aspirations and challenges of the world and to the communities they serve, to benefit humanity and contribute to sustainability. This is the pledge, the commitment that universities underwriting this statement take very seriously. Yet, although fostering sustainable development has become quite a catchphrase in university lingo over the last couple of years, one may wonder whether this has also become a lived reality. We all know that we at universities are very good at making statements and making plans. I remember that in my own university, where I was president some time ago in Amsterdam, we once had a new strategic plan prepared, and the plan was handed out and presented to the university leadership, and it had a great motto, and the motto was, is it a plan or are we going to do it? And this motto made us realize how often we have beautiful lingo, great language, great plans, but reality often stays behind. This is in a way a classic words, deeds match or clash issue, as we are all too familiar with. And what I would like to talk about is how universities, many more than are involved and engaged already today, might solve this puzzle. We have to realize that universities find themselves these days at crossroads with busy traffic. There is a multitude and a great complexity of meaningful options for each university, wherever you are. So there is a real urgent need to focus. At the same time, in each university, like in any great organization and institution, there is a strong dilemma between the comfort of the present, the things we are used to, the things we are familiar with, the positions we have, the programs we have, the curricula we have, and on the other hand, the sense of urgency of the future. We must adopt new curricula. We must adapt to change. We must move ahead. Yet this means leaving behind the comfort of the present, leaving behind the familiar programs and the issues that we, whether we are students or teachers or researchers, are used to feel comfortable with. At the same time, universities are often very complicated animals. And in a multi-layered institution, it is not easy to realize change. If you want a real engagement like to sustainable development to be not just a matter of paper and glossy pictures, but make it a reality in the classroom and make it a reality in the research institutes, you have to realize change in a complex situation. And institutional rethinking to that end and remodeling really requires more than just rephrasing strategies. And if you want to make that effective, if you want to really bring about change in your institution and not just in a small corner of it, you have to operate in an inclusive and diverse manner. You have to be able to reach and get the commitment of many participants, of many stakeholders. You have to involve many themes and many work processes. It is not a simple thing. Sustainable development involves not just environmental challenges. It is lots of societal challenges, educational challenges, legal challenges, health issues, and so on and so on. Almost all topics of the universities have a role in sustainable development. It also means that you cannot do with a monodisciplinary approach. If somewhere it is here that we need cross-fertilizing, we need interdisciplinarity. We must therefore redesign disciplines. We must develop broad and mixed curricula, and we must promote and protect collaborations across familiar borders. And this is all true in terms of teaching and learning, as well as in terms of research. That is quite a formidable agenda. So the question is really a serious one. Is this all a plan, or are we going to do it? If we need new policies, if we need the agency realized and felt, experienced at many places in the university, students feeling ownership, teachers feeling ownership, researchers feeling themselves in control. And we must make sure that such engagement and commitments are really embedded well and anchored well in the university. And one of the particular tricks that we are often confronted with is that we easily speak about we at the university. We use that language as a president, we use that language as students, we use that language as teachers, and we often forget that it's not just the I that easily expands to the we, that we really should work hard to make the I a we. And to create a community of engagement and commitment is really one of the most urgent and pressing tasks of universities today. So it is crucial that we are empowering ourselves as a community, as institutions, teachers, researchers, students, if we want to transform our university into what I like to call living labs, into the real world of today's many serious challenges. And that kind of a movement really requires joint ambitions and strong agency. Well, to get there is not easy. I've been in positions of leadership in university for more than 20 years, and I have experienced it the hard way myself. It is beautiful to have ideals, it's beautiful to make plans, but it's hard to get to the real thing, to get it end up in classrooms and end up in the researchers' workshop. And one of the many approaches, one of the most promising of the many approaches, I strongly believe, is in building up shared values. And in this statement, both the shared and the values are important. And when I talk about values, I mean lasting beliefs or ideals shared by the members of a culture about what is good or bad, what is desirable or undesirable. Values have a major influence on someone's behavior and attitude, and they serve as broad guidelines in all situations. And in any given university, we entertain lots of different values. And some of them are in contrast to each other. Sometimes they are overlapping. Sometimes they are strengthening each other and working together well. But going to look at values, working with values like enabling values, autonomy, academic freedom, operational values like integrity and fairness, and social values like social responsibility and equity is really essential if you look into the drivers of change, engagement, and commitment at a university. Values matter for universities because they are informing and steering the profiles we set, the kind of institution we want to be, the interests we want to serve and why. And they are also crucial in community building, in creating shared spaces and joint ambitions. Often our modern universities are theaters of very individual desires, career-oriented, success-oriented, often in competition with each other. And here we are talking about community endeavors, about community building, about shared spaces and joint ambitions. So identifying, discussing and sharing core values is of crucial importance to any university. And it's noticeably so in times of political turbulence, where people are often in opposition to each other. In times of competing claims, there's so many things a university can do. There's so many things you can do to be successful. So many things you can do to prepare for the labor market. So many things you can do to prepare for the success and the well-being of your society and our planet. And also, last but not least, in terms of internal fragmentation. And that's exactly why, in our view, sharing public commitments like the Magna Carta Universitatem 2020 is so important. Such statements are public commitments that one likes to make and that universities should want to make. Yet, we should shy away from making such statements if we do not immediately combine them with working on living values to unite and empower university communities. They become a facade, the outside of a university, the beautified, glossy side of our work, if we do not combine it with values that we live by, that we realize, and that are carrying our engagement. So my plea is to not just talk about a commitment to sustaining sustainable development goals, but make it a reality and go that route by starting to discuss the values that are driving such an engagement. And the closing sentence of the new Magna Carta Universitatem, which you can read here, where universities declare their commitment to the original declaration and to upholding and advancing the principles, values, and responsibilities of this new statement. They do that to strengthen the role of universities in the preservation of the planet and promoting health, prosperity, and enlightenment around the world. That is another way of formulating the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations that we talk about today. Fostering those sustainability goals requires being driven by community values, by social responsibility, commitment carried by all of the university community. And I invite you to work hard towards that goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Seibold, for this. We have a number of questions coming in, and I want to link to Stephanie Dostja has raised a question about whether this network is dialoguing about institutional change and inclusion. And the question that I want to link it with goes back to Ava's inclusion of students and the role of students. And I wonder what our three speakers think about what more might be done to involve students and to make this agenda more inclusive within our universities and our networks. Ava, would you be willing to start?
Yeah, I can say something. I think it's extremely important that when we work with the SDGs and in any way, but not only the SDGs, when we discuss what kind of university we are, and I link also to what Schibold Noorda says, I think it's extremely important that in those groups we have students, and we have students from a variety of countries, and also because we are international universities and we have a lot of international students, but we also have links, and we have a possibility to link to them in a way that we couldn't before. So COVID has made it possible for us to be a lot of persons who can actually interact. That's one thing. The other thing is, let them be part of the decisions. Let them be part of the decisions, not only sit there as listeners and taking whatever we decide. And I know that this is a very tricky question out in the world, because not all governments and not all institutions have a tradition of having students with them in decision-making bodies. We have it, and I think that is maybe one of the reasons why we've come quite a long way in Sweden. I'm not saying that we are perfect. There are many things where we don't agree with the students, but anyway, they, as I said, are our best critics, and therefore it's extremely important to listen to them and let them work also on their own on certain parts in a project. Because the youth, the young students have such a great creativity. Many things that we oldies but goalies don't see, actually. So I think there are lots of things I could say about this. I think that Schibold probably also, and Hilligier has other things to say.
Schibold?
Yeah, well, I would like to relate a little anecdote. At my university, some 10 years ago, we set up an interdisciplinary bachelor program, Future Planet Studies, which was interdisciplinary, and it was covering a very wide part of the Sustainable Development Goals. After the first class of students had completed this new program, after 4 years, we asked them about their experience while studying the program. And they said they were very enthusiastic. They would do it again. Would they have any criticism? And they said, well, yes, we found that we ourselves were more interdisciplinary than our teachers were.
Yeah.
Our teachers will have to learn quite something about interdisciplinarity. And I found that a very illuminating kind of a lesson. It shows two things. First of all, most of us have been educated ourselves in monodisciplinary settings. And we cannot by magic turn off that monodisciplinary background. We have to unlearn to become interdisciplinary thinkers and teachers. And the second thing is, if you want to set up a new course, if you want to set up a new program, we have to train and retrain and reinvent ourselves in a way. And we are often, and I'm speaking for myself as well, we are often taking it too easily and think, well, we will manage, we will cross that bridge once we get there. But doing complexity studies, the real way, the deep way, takes a lot of time and energy. And to be willing to do that, you need to be very convinced, and you need to have strong drivers.
Henrik, do you wish to comment?
I think that one of the things that I would say is don't be afraid of students.
Yeah.
In many parts of the world, there is a kind of distancing from students because they may derail the governance structure, they may derail the way in which things are being done. They may question too much, and thus don't be afraid of students is one of the catchphrases that I would love to see move around the world. We work a lot with student communities in Africa, in Latin America, in the Arab world. In Europe, there is a very powerful group called SOS, Sustainability Offices with Students, that works across the globe to actually develop the kind of student offices for sustainable development. And they have been spearheaded now in many parts with great success. They are given spaces in universities, they are engaging with the leadership, and the examples you gave, Eva, were very strong indeed on how to include the student voice at all the levels within even the governance structures. And the contributions they make are absolutely innovative. And you said it, Seibold, as well. It's true that they are the ones questioning. They are the ones who are probably more interdisciplinary than most are. They are the ones who question and ask for different solutions. And thus working with them is an incredibly powerful tool to reach the goals in a better time frame than without them. So yes, to involving the students, but yes, also to involving all the other stakeholders. We should not forget about even the admin staff, or about the technical support staff, about the opportunities for all to retrain, acquire new skills and opportunities for getting a better understanding of what is at stake and how they can contribute. Because sometimes there is a wish and a will, but there is no way for them to get involved properly. And thus, that requires what you called earlier, Ivan, this structured approach and these dialogues, this need to sit the different stakeholders at the table, to take the time to really discuss how people see things and little by little turn things around. And you're right, Seibold, it's never fast enough. Yet there are very good signs and reassuring signs that much is transforming, even though much more needs to be done. So we applaud the new Magna Carta text and the call for reconciling the values-based higher education and to really bring the many people to the table and work together. So yes to the students, but not only the students, all the others as well.
Well, as an observatory, we've had nothing but good experience from working with students, whether they've been on our council, whether they've been running bits of our conferences and so on. And by way a bit of a trailer, I am in discussion with the European Students' Union about collaborating with them for one of these events in the future. So if you would like to put in the chat or email us about issues that you think we should focus on in that, I would certainly welcome that very much. Now, there are a number of questions coming in about research and the role of researchers. And there's one here which I think captures it quite well and will require us to sort of turn the lens from universities to students. The question goes, how is it possible for independent researchers, PhD students, for example, to participate more actively with you in such processes? Now, I know we've addressed this partly from the point of view of the university, but what would we say to those independent researchers about getting involved? Eva, would you like to start?
I was thinking about the whole new idea that came from Macron about European university initiatives, trying to make research and education get together, and where actually in a very seamless way, students and researchers from different countries, not only in Europe, but also outside Europe, can have the opportunity of learning more from each other. This is, of course, a test, a pilot that is done by the Commission, but we have a network called, an alliance called Utopia. And here, I think it's extremely important that we also have the inclusiveness of researchers who are actually not part of our academia, but can be in different other places and in different countries. So I think open up to the world is something that we will, it's a challenge, and it's also not only demanding, it's scary, because if you are an independent researcher, how can you work within an institution that has all the structures already fixed? We're not really prepared for that now, but we have to open up. And there I think that maybe starting with webinars, I think that's why COVID is so important for us to learn from, because webinars like the one we're having here makes it possible for those who have asked the questions to come in and to be in a discussion. What comes out of that in organized research, that will have to be found out. Not everything can be institutionalized, but I think that the openness that Siebold also has been talking about, the democracy of bringing in different opinions, that is the only way to come into a more interdisciplinary and forward-looking research area.
I have seen beautiful examples of opening up to a wider science community, and also include citizen science.
Yeah.
And all these examples show that if we talk about sustainable development in a university, we should not have an attitude we are talking about problems out there. We are talking about business, we are talking about society, we're talking about politicians, about banking institutions and so on. No, we are talking about ourselves. We as universities are the most faithful followers of conservative trends in society. We are no better and no different. So we need to revolutionize ourselves to be able to respond to these challenges. And what I find, I've been reviewing programs and plans at various universities, met with lots of enthusiasm, but in most cases, we at universities think this is just an add-on. This is some nice extra topic that we do. We do lots of things in university, 1,000 different flowers are blossoming, and yes, sustainability is one of them. No, this is such a deep kind of revolutionizing approach to many traditional topics at the university that we have to be ready to change our ways, opening up research, and do away with lots of the existing programs and replace them by new ones and reinvent them. And that is not easy. That is painful, because we have been investing lots of time and energy in the old programs, and yet it's absolutely essential.
Thank you very much. Hilek, do you want to come in?
I think there are two other ways. There are all these forums or les foires de la recherche, these research hubs where also the independent researchers can come in, and there are calls for participation in publications. That is what the IAU, for instance, tries to do, is to bring all these calls a little closer to the people by having them all together in one space, offering for many more people to get involved in projects that they would have never heard from or heard about. That is one way. Of course, that's a limited one because that's publication again. So maybe that's more the traditional way of getting involved. But there are also many other initiatives that are much more inventive, innovative. I would take the example of the University of Costa Rica, for instance, which has put in place a mechanism where each student is to give back to the university and to society 800 hours of their time, where they work with the community and get in touch with many people who do work on very concrete and essential parts that request a transformation of the society. And thus it establishes a new kind of dialogue between the university and the society and brings the independent researchers in the broad variety of what we understand behind or with the word researcher together. So that's one example. And we're now also developing other kinds of research projects around the local mission of the university, where it will allow to look into what mechanisms universities are putting in place to reach out to the researchers out there, those who are not the classical ones, and how to get them involved. So these are just to give two examples rapidly for the sake of time.
I want to change the focus now a little bit. We have a question from Ukraine. Is the participation of NGOs envisaged in the condominiums networks we are speaking about? And which form of cooperation could this take? And I'm just wondering if I can broaden the question just a little bit to say that universities obviously engage with a number of different agencies from society, enabling their research and their contribution to the SDGs to be taken forward. Are we doing that as well as we can, or are there other things that we might be doing to increase the impact of what universities are doing? Who'd like to start with that?
Maybe I could, or Seibold, you're coming in. Yes.
Go. I can.
It's an interesting question just this week, because based at UNESCO, we are, as an IAU, we're an international non-governmental organization. So an NGO, yes, heavily involved in higher education and research for sustainable development. So the NGO world out there. And as a matter of fact, this week, UNESCO, the NGO community to UNESCO, hundreds of NGOs are gathering online, because obviously due to COVID, we are not gathering in Paris, but online, hundreds of NGOs will come together for a conference. The international UNESCO NGO community is coming together, and sustainable development will be high on the agenda. So the involvement of the many different mandates of NGOs from around the world are called to the task to also get involved with sustainable development. UNESCO is doing that also very concretely when gathering the World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development. The NGO community is invited to the table. They come to the conference, they share what they do, they connect their practices. So I would say, yes, there is space for the NGO world.
Seibold?
Well, I would like to point to the fact that in many countries there are national platforms on SDGs. And those platforms are not just university platforms. As a matter of fact, in many cases, it's not non-university institutions that take the initiative. So universities can also go there and learn, but these platforms are beautiful models to show that you can bring about change, the kind of change that sustainable development requires, only by grassroots involvement, not just inside the university, but also in our societies. So it is also a lesson to be inclusive in the way we deal with our partners in society. And this is not just true in the international field, but also nationally.
Eva, do you wish to
Yeah,
add?
no, you've said so many very good and thoughtful things, both Hilke and Schibold. So I think it's a really it's a difficult question to encompass the whole world, because we have different ways, different institutions in the different countries. And I think that what is most important is that we let our researchers be as free as they can. So the academic freedom, which I would like to come back to. The researchers, they seek other researchers. They seek also contacts with NGOs. And if we just steer this from top down, we will get some out of it, but it has to be a bottom-up perspective. Only in that way we can actually reach out to interesting participants, in whether it is NGOs, whether it is I don't know, companies or whatever, other institutions, but it's human beings we're speaking about. There has to be some kind of matchmaking, that people find it, that there is an added value to bringing in other persons into the research or the education community where you are, within which you are living and working. Because it's opening up a door and you don't know what comes in through that door. But it's not only opening up a door, it's also a question of getting out of that door, getting out of this ivory tower and this tradition that Schibold was mentioning before. So it might be scary, but I think it's the only way if we're going to tackle the big issues, and we're going to find a green economy. If we're going to find, if we take now the SDG 8, if we're going to find a solution where people can actually have a meaningful work environment, then we have to look outside our academia also. And the outside academia must also look into and come with solutions or discussions with us to find the solutions. So it's scary. It's scary. You have to be brave.
Well, maybe you'll have to be brave to address this last question, which is put in almost a confrontational way, but which I think gives you three an opportunity to also make a brief closing statement. The question is how to run towards global sustainability when, as universities, we are not sustainable ourselves. So the question is, what should we do to help the non-sustainable universities to set out the way of auto-sustainability? And perhaps we should broaden the question to say that, you know, what should we do to help all universities to become more sustainable? Who would like to start on that?
You have to start with yourself. You have to start being sustainable on your own. I have to be that. I have to be careful about how I use the car, how I actually include persons, and how I actually take advices and listen to other persons, because it's not only a climate question, it's all the 17 goals, it's all the SDGs. So if you don't start with yourself and looking and actually cleaning up at home, then it's not so easy to go out and say that we are so good and we do the best of all sustainability activities. And we have to teach you, because it's also a question of learning from others. Even if we are in a country where the sustainability maybe has not been raised to the awareness of a wider society, but still we have to learn quite a lot from each other here, I think.
Thank you. Hilke?
Yeah. I think I wanted to react in the same vein. I wanted to say all the people who come and work at universities or come through university for either a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, they're all citizens. So there, that evident connect between the university and society. They are those who are to behave according to what they have been learning. They've been taught, or they need to challenge the teaching and the learning that they've acquired in the university. There's another beautiful example that I may wish to give. It's the chair of the IAU Working Group on Education for Sustainable Development, Pornchai Mongkongvanit, who is the rector of Siam University in Thailand, in Bangkok. He said, well, let's start by cleaning up at home, as you said, Eva. And so they started to clean up around the university physically. So they went out into the surrounding areas, going into the slums and these areas where there was no health, no clean water, no sanitation, no opportunity for education. They brought the people inside the universities, those that were afraid of those university walls, never to enter the system, offering new scholarships to those who had never even dreamt of going to university. So there are these opportunities as well that universities have a real chance to transform and get engaged with. And so that's just one of the examples. I could give many more, but no time for that.
And the last word to Seibold.
Thank you, David. Well, I mean, if as an institution yourself you feel you're not sustainable, how can you still carry these ideals? I must confess that I often have seen universities that in my book, compared to my own institution, were hardly sustainable to do a much better job than we did. And I often felt that I had to learn to be more modest about our own pretensions when I was confronted with a small university in Suriname, or a university in a difficult part of town in Mumbai in India, or somewhere on Sumatra in Indonesia that I was visiting, where I often was struck by their idealism, their key and core values, their sense of community, and their strong commitment to changing their community and changing their society. And I've often wished that that we ourselves at very sort of established elite type of universities that are in the top 50 or top 100 of the rankings should learn better from these hardly sustainable universities. And so that's a lesson I've learned myself, and I hope I learn over and over again.
Well, Seibold, Eva, Hilik, thank you so much for what you have brought to today. 3 different perspectives from different places, all of which have enriched the other. Just 2 or 3 things before we close. Our next webinar will be in collaboration with the European Universities Association. Unfortunately, we don't have a date yet. We are awaiting the publication of the EUA's study, Universities 2030. It's due to be published in January. And what we are talking about doing together is looking at that through the perspective of values. But we will send you an email when the date is agreed, and hopefully you will be able to join us then. As an observatory, we want to continue to improve what we do. So you can help us by giving us your feedback on today, and you can do that either by picking up the link from the information which we sent out this morning, or by clicking the link on the chat. If you are here from a university which has not yet signed the Magna Carta Universitatem, details of how to do so can be found on page 13 of the background notes or on our website. And if you need any further information or help about that, just email us and we will help you. And then lastly, but by no means least, can I thank Hilik, our partner in this webinar. It's always a joy to work with IAU, and I think the way today has turned out shows something of the value of that collaboration and what we bring both to it. And although she is invisible to us, could I also thank Carla, our administrator, who has been making sure that things go without a hitch from a technical point of view. And finally, can I thank all of you for joining us, for providing some really insightful and challenging questions. And for those of you who celebrate Christmas, may I wish you a good time and some real celebration despite COVID and everything that is around. And may I wish everybody a very happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New
You
Year.
as well.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much
Thank you.
indeed. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Presenters, Seibold and
Bye-bye.
David, very nice to connect this way and
Yes, really.
continue the conversation.
Well, I'd urge you all just to have a look at the chat if you have not done so, because I think one of the things that challenges all in these COVID times is how do we maintain a sense of community, which our organizations want to, when we're not physically able to meet and have that drink together or the meal together or the coffee, but just looking through the chat at the moment, that sense of community is still very much there and
Yes, it is.
very much appreciated. So I'm very grateful to everybody who has written something on that. I have answered the question on the chat, but yes, this recording is going to be accessible. You can get a link from the MCO website, and Hilik, you may want to have the link on your website as well.
Yes.
And what I would also say is keep the dialogue going. We are not restricted to just doing one webinar on this topic. We can pick up threads and we can put them through. And if there's something that you want to say, you want to contribute, then do let us know, because we are an inclusive community and we would be very happy to involve you. So please. And if anybody now wants to open their microphones and contribute in a less formal setting, then Carla, maybe you can unmute everybody and they can do so. This in some quarters is called a big risk.
You opened the door to outside.
Yeah.
Wow, that's right.
That's good.
Mm.
Yeah. You have to dare. I actually have a ceremony with our students who have been working in our student bodies, and we're celebrating them at the end of the year now and thank them for all what they've done for their student fellows. Yeah. So I'm going to that ceremony now, and they're getting a medal, actually a medal.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Carla has just told me she can't unmute everybody. So if anybody wants to contribute, please unmute yourselves and do so. And Ava, I hope you have a great
Thank
ceremony.
you.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you,
It was a pleasure.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye. Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thank you.